Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I'm your host, Mary Katharine. I'm here with my co-host, Vic Matus of the Free Beacon, and we got a lot going on. Obviously, there's going to be some Israel updates, some press bias updates that are pretty interesting, and we've got a debate recap. I was in Miami last night. We've got a election recap of disappointing night for Republicans pretty much across the nation. And before we get to that, let's just chat it up. How you doing, Vic?
Hello, Mary Katharine. I'm doing okay on the mend. First of all, thanks to our listeners who are concerned about my back.
Mm.
And somebody said for me, I apologize, I don't have it in front of me. So one of our fine listeners, I can't remember which one, had said heating pad, cold packs, and quote unquote light gardening.
Hmm.
Light gardening. It took me a couple of seconds to figure out what he meant by that. So
Keep it
yes,
light, people.
much appreciated. But it is. I'm on the mend, so that is
Okay, good.
good. And a little discombobulated. We're doing a Getting Hammered After Dark
I
because of our
know.
trip.
We- Today has been an adventure.
Yeah,
Yesterday was an adventure.
I had thoughts on my end, but I want to throw it enough. I forget about me because I want to talk about you because where you are, where you've been, but mostly where you are now. Go.
Okay, well, I was in Miami.
You were great. I enjoyed seeing you on NBC.
Thank you very much. And I knew that I was going to be staying up late because, you do the debate stuff until 11 or 12, and then you're kind of wired, and then there's after parties. And I went to a nice little after party
Ooh.
with the Ruthless guys were there. Joni Ernst was there. Nikki Haley was there. It was a
Ah,
crew. It was a crew over there. So I stayed up way too late. And so I'm going to pose to you an ethics question for my trip today. Okay.
okay.
So I stayed up way too late till like 2 in the morning, got up at 6 to get to the airport.
Oh my gosh, I feel nauseous because that's what I feel. If you got like 3 hours to sleep, you wake up
It's
nauseous.
not great. It's
Yeah.
not great. So I get on my flight
Uh-huh.
and I don't know what kind of flight I was booking because it turns out I had this long layover in Dallas. I don't know what that
Not
was
even a
about.
direct?
So yeah, I think I thought the flight was direct. I think I just goofed on this one. So I get to Dallas and I have like a nice chunk of time and I'm very tired.
I have a question for you.
Hmm.
DFW or love?
DFW.
Okay, well, that's huge.
And so I think to myself, oof, I could really go for a short snooze, right? But it's an airport. How are you going to do that?
Yeah.
Let me tell you how you do that, Vic. I looked up on the internets.
Yes.
Is there a nursing mother's room in this airport? Because in a nursing mother's room in an airport, there's a lock. It's nice and
Oh,
quiet and
come
dark.
on.
There is a comfy chair that rocks.
Hold on. This begs the question. Were you with your newborn?
No, no.
This is like the secret that somebody told me about, how to make things work at Penn Station, which I'm not even sharing
Yes.
I can't share with our listeners. There's an amazing hack, and I'm not sharing it about to make life easier at Penn Station, but it's like this. So go ahead. I cannot believe you're sharing this.
Yeah. So look, it's a nursing and pumping room. So you don't have to have
Uh,
a baby to go in there. Okay.
you just need privacy.
Yeah. You don't
Hmm.
you don't have to have a baby to get
Hmm.
in there.
Yeah.
They're not super frequently used because it's just like it's a
Yeah.
fairly small population that needs this room. And I thought, you know what? I think I could steal away in there for 30 minutes, get myself a little
Okay.
shut eye.
When you walk,
And
okay. Listeners can't see I'm shaking my head, but continue, please.
And you know what I thought,
What?
Vic?
Hmm.
Granted, this is my rationalization here. I have been a nursing mother.
Sure.
I could be a nursing mother now.
Yeah.
Should someone need proof?
Yeah. What's the proof? How
Should someone need proof? I
inappropriate?
I could produce a picture on my
Oh,
phone.
I could produce dot dot dot.
I could produce a picture on my phone of a
Oh,
9-month-old baby, and
uh-huh.
nobody would have any questions
And you
after
would say,
that.
"Hey, that's for him or her, whoever." Exactly. Okay.
But like, technically, I'm not currently, but I also feel like they didn't have nursing rooms when I started having babies, and
You want to make up for it,
I have
like
some banked time.
retroactive. Yeah.
Yeah, where I was sitting in toilet stalls, and
Okay.
maybe, like, I can take my time now.
So you
S
found the place at
I
DFW.
did, and it was lovely.
Oh man. Okay. Here's another question. I don't think I would feel bad if there was nobody there.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, no, there's nobody there.
I have been on a train where a conductor is banging on a door because a handicapped person could not use the handicap stall
Yeah, no,
because, some
obviously, I'm not
there's
looking
a
to
mom and she's
preclude.
bursting and she needs the room right now, Mary Katharine.
I figured the chances that
Yeah.
would happen
Mhm.
in the 30 minutes I was in there would be low.
Oh, here's another question. Is there a guard? Is it like one of those lounges? Is it like the Lufthansa Senator's Lounge where it's like you must show anything, some sort of ID?
No, you just go in.
It's just a room.
Okay.
That's wild.
I calculated that I would probably not be stopping anyone from using this room for this
Okay.
very short period of time.
Yes.
And look, there's a little log where you can say that you used the room, I think, because they want to know how often people use the room. And it was like 2 days
Sure.
ago it had been used. So
Wow.
I felt like I was pretty safe. So if there is a mom out there who came by that nursing room and needed it during that period of time, I would like to apologize. I was claiming my time
Yeah.
from my past nursing.
Yeah, no, you really milked it for what it's worth. Okay, is this located like a hideaway? Is it like a hard to find place, like a George Costanza bathroom in the
Yeah,
city
you
situation?
kinda have to know where they are.
Oh,
There's a little network
yeah.
of moms on the internet who keep you abreast of such
I
information.
touche, touche. That's what happens when you do Getting Hammered After Dark. Love Field, I'm a really big fan of. It's such a pleasant airport. It's small. They have little music, like a little band will play. There's a Whataburger that's right there. W is so large that by the time when I was
Gigantic.
there with my son, you get to your gate and it's miles away. By the time you get there, it's usually in a location where there's nothing else there or it'll be some lousy outlet. So I mean, it's a gamble, and some of the best stuff at DFW is right when you walk in. Then you worry like, well, how far is the gate? So it's
Well, and then after that adventure where I felt refreshed,
yes.
and then I
Whew.
flew the rest of the way to Vegas,
Yeah.
which is where I am now. But I don't really do Vegas.
Have
I'm
you
here
been to
for
Vegas
work.
before?
Yes.
Do you gamble?
No.
That's terrible.
Yeah. But
That's
I
like
have friends who don't gamble who love Vegas.
that's like being an atheist in Rome.
It's a strange
It's a
thing, but it
strange thing.
happens.
I
So
lo yeah.
I'm not big on Vegas. I don't dislike it. I think the weather's usually pretty
Oh,
nice.
weather's great. And then,
It's
there's lots of things to do. This is what I always try to convince Kate, about. It's a family place now, there's nice restaurants and shows, lots of
Mhm.
shows. There's
There's
a huge
lots of
mall.
shows.
There's the Sphere. I'd love to
I know
go to the Sphere.
that does look really cool. I can
Oh
see
my
that.
god, you could so
I've
it
seen that from
like,
here.
to the naked eye, is it really weird looking? It's like a
It's very strange looking.
wow,
It's definitely
like a planet has landed on Earth.
yeah, it definitely sticks out in the
Yeah,
skyline. You're not used to seeing that kind of thing.
that's wild.
But so here I am in
Okay.
Vegas and probably will do nothing exciting
Yeah, okay, so,
aside from my speech, which of course will be.
that'll be great. See, that's a shame. I love to play craps. The last time I was in Vegas, I think, was a year ago with Sonny Bunch. Sonny plays poker because he doesn't like to be bothered by anybody,
Yes, he's
and
not a
it's
social
no, no, I couldn't
player.
even get I'm not allowed near the table. I had to take a picture of him at a distance, and he doesn't like talk to anybody at the table. It is like the exact reverse of craps. At craps, we're all talking to each other because 'cause we're all in it together.
Constantly.
You gotta defeat the house, it's very exciting. You're winning friends when you're rolling the dice, and in poker, it's, every man for himself, so it's a much different experience. Do you get to eat on your own, or is it just at the conference? Do you have any time to eat? There's so many amazing restaurants there.
I don't think I'm gonna have much time.
That's
This
so
is a
sad.
very quick adventure, and then I'm actually going to Georgia for the Georgia game, and then I'm going
Wow.
yeah,
You're
it's
really
a lot.
logging in the miles. You're,
There
like,
was a
up
lot
in the air.
on the list. Okay, speaking of a lot on the list, we should move on
Yeah,
to the
let's
news
do
because
it.
I might have a heart out here, and
Okay,
I wanna get to some things
works
while
for
people
me.
are if people haven't turned off the podcast due to my lack of character having used the nursing room for 30 minutes. Okay. So let's do a little bit of update on Israel
Yeah, sure.
and responses and rise in anti-Semitism, which
It's
is
not good.
pretty bad
Yeah,
past couple of days. Gal Gadot, who is the lovely woman who played
wonderful.
Wonder Woman,
Mhm.
she's Israeli, and she
Former
screened
IDF, I believe.
yes, she screened at the Museum of Tolerance in LA this week. The some 45 minutes of I believe footage. It's like a
It's
documentary
hard.
of
Yeah,
the October 7th massacre. And I'm sure it's horrific to watch, but it's one of these things where people are being
yeah.
called to bear witness to this because there are denialists. And the idea that she was playing this footage, which was, of course, joyfully recorded by
Yeah,
Hamas
it's sick.
on purpose, made pro-Palestinian slash pro-Hamas protesters so mad that they started all sorts of fights at the Museum of Tolerance.
The irony of ironies,
Yeah.
the intolerance in front of the Museum of Tolerance. There's there's something very odd and dark going on here because October 7, it doesn't sit well with them for 2 reasons. For the pro-Hamas side, the
Mhm.
anti-Israel side, shall we say. On the one hand, they don't want people to know how horrible the attacks were
Right.
and the really horrific medieval nature of the brutality, if you will, and the things that you and I have read that you can't get it out of your mind, and it's this really really awful thing. But as you say, the importance to bear witness, and the people who need to aren't. That's the other problem.
Right.
But the other thing is, there's this level of denialism that is, you might as well be talking about the Holocaust. I mean, you're just all in now,
Yeah.
and it's they either say it didn't happen.
Or it's AI.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's propaganda, Hollywood,
Um,
Jews, the whole
right, right,
thing.
right. Also,
Conspiracy.
in our neighbor to the north, on the 85th anniversary of Kristallnacht, there was at least one college group that advertised a protest with shards of glass. Like,
Yeah,
on the 81st anniversary
yeah,
of Kristallnacht, advertising your anti-Israel rally with shards of glass. That's
yeah.
that's a real
And
anti-Semitic,
yeah,
cherry on top right
and
there.
while accusing Israel of being the Nazis.
Yes.
So, again, it's just this it's weird, you're hearing from some of the, reporters who go to these protests, and they talk to all of these young people who were there to stand on the side of Free Palestine and the ceasefire, the whole thing from river to the sea. And a number of these people, these kids being interviewed have no idea what you're talking about when
Well,
you're
they know
referring to
nothing.
October 7th,
Yeah.
but they're there,
Or
or
they
they
know nothing about where Jews came
no,
from or why
no,
Israel exists, or
why Judea,
it's
no,
all been sort of
yeah,
laundered through the shocking insanity of our higher ed institutions.
yeah, they
Uh,
really have succeeded in doing that.
Speaking of reporters, let's do a bit on this stringers. So it's obviously hard to have reporters in Gaza because Gaza
Oh
is not a
boy,
free place
yeah, I know,
and it doesn't
right.
allow reporters and photojournalists and
I was gonna
videographers in
say
the same
photographers
or photographers in the
or
same way.
videographers, yeah,
Right, in the same way that a free country like Israel does. Therefore, large news organizations end up partnering with stringers of questionable
yep,
quality and morals and
affiliations,
affiliations. Well, someone noticed, a couple of people had talked about this in the early going that, hey, sure did seem like the AP and CNN had some folks who were very conveniently placed
yeah,
while this was happening. Now, some of that can be because those people live near this area and they find
mhm,
out something is going on and then they go cover it, right?
mhm,
That is a possibility. But for a long time, people have had concerns that many of these folks are more aligned with Hamas than they
right,
are being journalists. Well, now there is at least one photo of an AP and CNN contributor photographer being kissed on the cheek
yeah,
in a selfie
exactly,
by, the head of Hamas in Gaza and
that's
the
right,
architect of the 10/7 slaughter. There's also video of a contributor photographer that looks like he's riding on a motorbike into Israel on the day of October 7th with a grenade in his hand. So
yeah,
that would be definitely an ethical issue, guys.
yeah,
Both of those things are a problem. Now, one would think that the press would be like, "Oh my gosh, let us denounce this immediately and detach ourselves from these
mhm,
associations." Not the New York Times. The New York Times says the accusation that anyone at the New York Times had advanced knowledge of the Hamas attacks or accompanied Hamas terrorists during the attacks is untrue and outrageous. It is reckless to make such allegations, putting our journalists on the ground in Israel and Gaza at risk. They said that basically there's nothing here, but there
yeah.
is something there.
Yeah, it's curious because, again, CNN and the Associated Press, have announced immediately they're severing ties. They want to emphasize that, as far as they know, there's no evidence that this person Hassan Ismaila, I think his name
Hmm.
is Eslaya, excuse me, Hassan Eslaya, that he was there before the attack and that these photos were given to us hours after. That said, we're going to sever ties with him.
Yeah.
So clearly they're worried. And Mr. Eslaya is already very upset and saying that this is, he's being attacked and he's worried about his safety now because of, as he says, there's, Israeli media
Yeah.
and such. So
Well, the New York Times is not severing ties. And remember, they also had the guy working for them who tweeted in favor of Hitler several times, and
yeah,
they gave him a talking to, and he still works for them as well. So, and then lastly, the Washington Post spiked a uh, a
cart-
political cartoon that
cartoon. Yeah,
criticized Hamas for using civilians as human shields because their newsroom got angry. Newsrooms have got to stop doing this. It
yeah,
is the most cowardly thing to let these employees run your coverage, particularly when this is art.
right.
It is a political
But
cartoon.
it's echoes of Tom Cotton op-ed in the New York
Yes.
Times, and suddenly the newsroom says that op-ed, which urged, the National Guard or the military to stop the rioting and the burning down of all of these businesses after the George Floyd riots, trying to urging the military to get involved to stop the burning down of our city, by the way, is
Mhm.
harmful to us.
It was very harmful.
And therefore, a bunch of people need to be sacked, including the top editors. And now we have this problem. The cartoonist is Michael Ramirez, who I knew from the Weekly Standard days.
Right.
A very nice guy, very serious guy, extremely talented, a Pulitzer Prize winner, cartoonist as well. And they went after the way he caricatured the terrorists, the Hamas. I
Mhm.
mean, it's a Hamas terrorist. He surrounds himself with, innocent people and children and says, "How dare you attack the innocent women and children," as he's
Right.
surrounded by them. And they're saying that the drawing is racist. If you look at all of Michael Ramirez's, the style of his illustrations, his drawings, they all look the same way. I
It's
mean,
just a cartoon,
yeah,
yes.
he's drawn Bibi Netanyahu the same way. There's no, you know what I mean? You name it. But anyway, they of course they hit the panic button.
Right.
So there we are.
They shouldn't do that. It is a heckler's veto. That's what that is,
Yeah,
and it's you're losing free expression as a result. Also, I should note that Israel, now that it is in Gaza City, is
yeah,
doing daily humanitarian
yeah.
pauses
For
to let people
4 hours a day.
out of corridors and to get things
Yeah,
done to help the actual Palestinians who are not Hamas. They are able to do that now because they are in more control of
yeah.
this space than they
Mhm.
were before. So that's that's the
I
situation now. Still 200 some hostages, and I pray for miracles every day that a lot of them come
Yeah,
out
particularly
alive.
when you see there are these children, and to imagine, little kids or babies now for a month.
Yeah.
They've been held hostage for they're not detained the way that some of the media outlets wanted to describe it, but they have been kidnapped and held hostage for a month is awful. And you saw also Mary Catherine Rashida Tlaib got censured.
Oh yes, that's right.
She
Oh,
did, not
she's
just by all the Republicans, but 22
yeah,
Democrats.
good. Good for them. This
That tells me, you know, the Republicans, as you know, we'll get to this later, they have a ton of problems. The Democrats have a very serious problem here because they have in their ranks basically anti-Semites, people who are issuing like Rashida Tlaib blood libel,
yeah.
accusing Israel of blowing up a hospital of doctors and patients and not backing down from that. So I don't know what they're going to do with that problem because clearly, you know, in the past we've talked about and marveled about, Hakeem Jeffries' discipline over his caucus, but this is not good.
Yeah. Speaking of that, one would think that holding that caucus together and holding that coalition together would cause enough problems for Democrats that perhaps Republicans, who are
Oh,
leading on trust for the number one issue in the
yeah.
nation,
Yeah.
would have a pretty good election night this week. But that is not what happened, Vic.
No, and I think we I don't know, you'll have to refresh my memory, Mary Catherine. How did we play the our we didn't we hedged, we didn't talk about, we didn't give any,
We didn't talk about. Look here. So here's
but
the thing.
now
I
it
think
can be said. I was gonna predict all along they weren't gonna win. I'm just gonna say it to you right now. Sorry, there's
okay.
no way for me to
Well,
prove it, but
a couple things. So obviously, Republicans lost the Kentucky governor's race.
yeah,
Daniel Cameron lost that to the
and
Democratic
to
incumbent Andy
Bashir.
Bashir, who is it must be said, a pretty impressive politician because he has won there twice
Yeah, and even as attorney
when
general under a Republican, enormously popular.
right. So, definitely credit to him.
Yeah.
And then there was the Mississippi governor's race, which Republicans won by not by very much.
Yeah.
And then in Virginia, which is where I was covering stuff and where I was out with Americans for Prosperity doing like watching their door knockers
Yeah.
and hanging out with Juan Pablo Segura,
Oh,
who as I noted, very, very, very tough district in that Loudoun
yeah.
County area that Youngkin won by 100 votes. So very uphill fight for him. He did not win.
I think he lost by about 5 points
Yeah.
maybe.
So
Yeah.
Republicans ended up gaining one Senate seat, but not control of the Senate,
Mhm.
and they lost control of the House of Delegates. It's still fairly close.
It is.
Now,
It's the final breakdown because a lot of the press talked about the Democrats' sweep of
mhm,
Virginia legislature as if this is 1994, but in fact, it was very narrowly divided. It's 21 Democrats and 18 Republicans in the Senate, 51 Democrats and 48 Republicans in the House. So the ones that they had to flip, those were the hard ones, as you were
yes,
mentioning, Mary
yes, they
Katharine.
were
Those are
on
ones that like Biden won by double digits.
they were
It's
on Biden
in the North.
5+
Yeah,
win
yeah,
areas,
it
and all
was.
of the ones I believe that Biden won by 8, they won, but they didn't get quite up to
Sure.
the Biden plus 10
No,
districts.
no.
Now, a couple things. Virginia redistricted just recently. This is the first race
Yeah.
with the new districts. It is a map that has
Mhm.
a blue tilt. It
Yep.
was a hard map for Republicans. Now, it's discouraging because Youngkin is so good
Yeah.
and he will have a lot less opportunity to do things in the next 2 years because of this.
Thank God
And
for his veto power.
and he's term limited. So he's done after those 2 years. It's discouraging because hopes were high because he is such a good competent leader and he did make a
Yeah.
bunch of changes that were important. Now, I think those changes that I've talked about and that I wrote about, doing the early voting, getting good candidates, like doing the 15-week abortion messaging, I think that repaired damage from the
Mhm.
past, but did not quite it basically
Right.
fought to even, which is
Yeah.
an underwhelming accomplishment, but is not the end of the world. But yes, it is tough because he's such an exemplary
Yes.
candidate,
No, I
that
yeah.
to have his popularity not be more of a boon
Yeah.
is a bummer.
It is worth pointing out Susanna Gibson lost.
Yes. I s
Congratulations to
I
David
said
Owen.
I said, "If Cam Girl wins, man, I'm
I
done.
know.
I'm
No,
done."
no, she was yeah. There's a joke in there, but I'm gonna be good. I
You know
said it
what?
on Twitter.
I
I'm
gotta
being
say,
good.
between her and Jeffrey Toobin, I've realized that I've really been too narrow in my career focus. There were so many more opportunities for me,
Yeah, no, really, it's how much further you could have gone, and the
so much
tokens,
further.
not to mention the tokens. So, yes, so she went down, and of course, there was a race up in New York. It was just
Oh, yeah.
it's not Westchester, it's, I think,
No, but
Suffolk
yeah,
County. Yeah,
New York, weirdly a bright spot again. It's one of the few
yeah,
places in
rebuilding
these
Al D'Amato's Long Island
yeah.
Republican machine.
But I
Yeah,
think so look, I again, my disappointment is somewhat tempered
mhm,
in Virginia because of those facts. However, this is like a giant red blinking light once
yeah,
again that the fundamentals of the economy and the fact that people don't like Biden and all these things can be swamped
yeah,
if like you don't pull it together.
right.
Like it
So
is
do you how much weight do you put, Mary Catherine, on abortion being the problem, and that it sort of overshadows then all
yeah.
of these issues that you just
So
mentioned, the
I think a
economy, what
I think a place like
immigration,
Northern Virginia, it is really important because
right?
suburban educated moms,
Yeah,
that's the demo
right,
that is in trouble. Now, all of the ads they were running against somebody like a Segura were like, he's gonna ban it
right,
forever in every
right,
way with no
right,
exceptions. Those ads weren't true, but
yeah,
they worked
right,
probably to some degree. Republicans are in a tricky place. And I think it was legally and morally correct to
yeah,
overturn Roe, but that does mean that this gets decided in the states, which I think is good.
right. I mean, that was
Voters should
this is
decide
what
these
we've
things.
always said, and you got to vote on these things, like in
But
Ohio, although it can go turn
yeah,
badly for
and it makes people
pro-lifers.
that was another big loss
Yeah,
for pro-lifers, but it makes people nervous and
yeah,
it can change the way that
yeah,
people think about these
yeah,
issues. In Virginia, I think it was important to have something to talk about. You can't just not talk about it. You
yeah,
have to have some sort of this
Mhm.
is what I stand for, or else the vacuum will be entirely filled.
Yeah, they'll control the narrative if you don't do it,
Um,
and I give Glenn Youngkin props for saying, "Okay, well, here's our position, 15 weeks," which is very reasonable,
and that
unfortunately.
proposition is about a 50-50 polling
Yeah,
in Virginia,
yeah,
okay?
that's
So it's not unpopular, it's not hugely popular, but it's not unpopular,
right.
and so I think you have to have something to talk about, but you have to have really good ways to talk about it,
Yeah,
and you have to spend money to define your position and not get swamped by
yeah,
the "they will ban everything ever" messaging,
right.
and that didn't happen to the extent that it needed to.
No,
Uh,
it gives hope to Joe Biden that, look,
for
we just
sure.
saw, despite all of the horrible numbers, and they're still talking about his horrible numbers today, and the poll numbers keep on showing very, very bad numbers in battleground states for Joe Biden. But then he gets to say, "Look at the midterm.
Yeah.
Everyone thought we were gonna get, swamped by the red
Yeah,
wave. Look at this off-year election. Look what happened just there." If they can just talk about abortion all the time, that's it.
yeah.
He stays. He wins.
Well, and I think Democrats have become very good, and their demographics have changed a bit so
Yes,
that
sure.
their off-year voters are very reliable,
Mhm.
and they are getting them out even though when they're not excited,
Yeah,
right?
that's
And
right.
that is a huge and very important
Mhm.
skill to have.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
so that's gonna cause some problems. Speaking of which, I wanna go to the debate,
Yeah, let's do.
and can we did you hear the answers on abortion, by the way, in the
Uh, uh,
debate?
in part, but go
Okay.
ahead.
So, I wanna play a little bit from Ron DeSantis.
I'm reminded of a story about a young mother who was struggling in Jamaica about 40 years ago, 45 years ago. She was counseled to not have a baby because she was poor, wouldn't have opportunity, and she came close to have an abortion, but she decided to have the baby born poor in Jamaica. And the reason I know that story is because that baby girl ended up emigrating to the state of Florida, becoming a lawyer and a judge, and I appointed her to the Florida Supreme Court in August of 2022. We're better off when everybody counts.
And then he goes on to talk about how, hey, the pro-life movement really has to figure out how to fight these referenda in a
Yeah,
place like Ohio.
Ohio.
But he did a lot of that on the debate stage last night, more than he usually does, which is bringing people's stories
Yeah.
into the points that he's making.
Again,
It's not
humanizing it.
usually his strong suit, and that's a particularly good one where you're talking about a personal experience that you have that sheds a really beautiful light on what a culture of life can look like. Nikki Haley did what she did in the first debate, which was say, "Look, we have to deal with what is possible.
Right.
I'm,
She's
passionately pro-life,
she's the only
but
woman on the stage.
these are the things that we can do,
Right.
and these are the ways we can talk about them." So we'll play a little clip of her too.
I've said it before. I think you have to be honest with the American people. This is a personal issue for every woman and every man. I am unapologetically pro-life, not because the Republican Party tells me to be, but because my husband Michael was adopted and I had trouble having both of my children. So I'm surrounded by blessings. Having said that, when you look post-Roe, a wrong was made right. They took it out of the hands of unelected justices and they put it in the hands of the people. And now we're seeing states vote. And what I'll tell you is, as much as I'm pro-life, I don't judge anyone for being pro-choice, and I don't want them to judge me for being pro-life. So when we're looking at this, there are some states that are going more on the pro-life side. I welcome that. There's some states that are going more on the pro-choice side. I wish that wasn't the case, but the people decided. But when it comes to the federal law, which is what's being debated here,
I think she is smart in the way she speaks about this, and it is something the way that she does it does not scare women off.
No, and I'm going to be very interested in the next week to see how her numbers track. For Ron DeSantis, I'll be also interested, but for him, it's more of a worry of, can he move that needle? Because, man, you look at a number of these candidates and you can't help thinking, is this the last time we're going to see them on the stage? I thought that certainly about Chris Christie.
So
Uh,
to me, that was the
yeah,
message of this debate, loud and clear,
yeah,
was Haley and DeSantis are head and shoulders above everyone else for a reason,
yes, yeah.
and everyone else needs to probably clear off. Like,
Yeah. Oh, so,
so
which brings me to our friend Vivek. What did you think, Mary Katharine?
I mean,
It was quite
he's doing
something.
he's doing his gadfly thing. I mean, this is
What's the
he
point now for him? Do you think the goal is still in his mind, "I'm gonna win this nomination by being a
I
real
don't
jerk"?
I don't think he thinks he's gonna win. I think he wants a cabinet position, I would assume, or just
Wow.
wants to be famous in the future, which is like,
Yeah.
this is a way
Okay.
to make money.
I didn't
I
realize, by the way, until later that he had told the reporters, that his strategy was to be unhinged,
Oh,
is what he said. And but it's like, okay, well, you did it. It's like the full measure. And when he said unhinged, the first thing that came to my mind is there's this really terrifying movie from a few years ago with Russell Crowe as a deranged road rage
yes.
murderer called Unhinged.
Yeah.
And this is who you are,
Look,
really?
I just don't think it's effective. I think it gives Nikki Haley ample opportunity
It made her look good.
to stuff him in a locker once again.
Yeah.
She's great at it.
He brought her up her daughter.
He brought up her daughter, which is so dumb.
Yeah.
There's a way to do that where you're just making the point that young people are in this
Right.
space, and
I'm a young
it's really
person.
important
Your
to them,
daughters, we both like TikTok.
and I want to speak to
Mhm.
young people. Like, I guess
Yeah.
but her daughter is irrelevant to the discussion.
Yeah.
And
And the way he
he's
says, "You
sort of
better you should mind, worry about your family first," as if the daughter is a little girl, but
no,
she's actually
she's like 25,
right,
she's married,
right.
and Nikki Haley should not be dictating her social media presence. And if she were, everyone would call her a weirdo for doing that.
Yeah.
So like it was a totally unfair shot. I loved that both Nikki Haley a little softer tone, but I loved Ron DeSantis's first answer, which came directly at Trump from the
Oh, yeah.
second the debate started, and in fact posed a bunch of questions to him since
Mhm.
he's not on the stage and we can't do it live that are worth posing. So we'll play a little bit of that.
Now, if you look where we are now, it's a lot different than where we were in 2016. And Donald Trump's a lot different guy than he was in 2016. He owes it to you to be on this stage and explain why he should get another chance. He should explain why he didn't have Mexico pay for the border wall. He should explain why he racked up so much debt. He should explain why he didn't drain the swamp. And he said Republicans were going to get tired of winning. Well, we saw last night, I'm sick of Republicans losing. In Florida, I showed how it's done. 1 year ago here, we won a historic victory, including a massive landslide right here in Miami-Dade County. That's how we have to do it. So I promise you this, as the nominee, next November, I'll get the job done. And as president, I will deliver
your time
for
is
you.
up. Let me turn to Ambassador.
I worry for DeSantis because looking at him, it was like Nixon 1960. It's beginning that there's a bunch of sweat on his upper lip. I was like, oh man, he's getting
He got
nervous. I
he
get
got
it.
he got good response in the snap
Good.
polls.
Oh,
And
good.
then there was at least one place that did a focus group of Iowa voters
Yes.
who had been Trump voters before, who were not committing in the focus group to voting
Ah.
for Trump this time.
Okay.
I think 2 of them raised their
Yeah.
hands. So that's very interesting because I have wondered whether there would be a slow sort of
Yeah.
degradation of his support in quality because he's not showing up for these things. Again, that could be fool's gold. That's might not be a real thing. But I work with Americans for Prosperity, and they knock doors, they talk to voters a lot, and they talk about how the support is softer than it has been in
Yeah.
the past. Now, does it move? I don't know. But I think that might be some evidence that it could be softer.
Right,
But
we're like
the dude's ahead by 40 points.
I know. So I mean, it's like, oh, we can cut his lead down to 10. Well, guess what? If he's only up by 10, he's still winning.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. And I think Iowa caucus is 50 something days away. Yeah. So I did. I took. I took some notes for this debate, by the way, and then I noted that I fell asleep, and then when I woke up to Tim Scott telling me to go to a farm. I wasn't sure what was happening.
Look, and Tim Scott remains likable,
Yeah.
and
Oh, he was great, and he was great
but-
yesterday. He was
but I think his style is not well suited to a crowded
Right.
stage, whereas a DeSantis and a Haley get sharper the fewer people we have
Oh,
on
yeah.
stage and you see more of them.
sure.
I still think Tim Scott's not shining in that place. Chris Christie did a weird nicey nice unity thing, and I was
Mhm.
like, man, blow somebody up. Well, what are you here for?
Oh, he was. He was. Even his hair was nicely coiffed, and I mean, but at least he didn't say anything corny like Donald Trump is more like Donald
Donald
Duck.
Duck.
A little
Honestly,
cringe.
I might have taken a Donald Duck joke last night. Anyway, any other thoughts about the debate?
No, I mean, obviously having fewer people there helps. I don't know how did you feel sad that Doug Burgum wasn't there?
I mean, it is what it is. You got to earn your way out
Yeah.
of the stage, and he did not make it. I did
Yeah.
think it was a well moderated debate. I enjoyed a lot of the questions. My one complaint on that front was that they didn't let them respond to each other enough, and two, that they
As
didn't
well,
get to
the hosts were very tough. You have balloons now.
I don't know, man.
You had a party.
They didn't
Party.
we're on Zoom, and for some reason balloons came up. They didn't get to domestic issues
No,
and the
yeah,
economy until an
yeah.
hour in to
That's
the
right,
debate.
that's right.
So,
Immigration, for that matter. Okay.
I do wanna do a quick 2024 update
Oh, sure.
because we're gonna keep it's a lot of business today, guys,
Yeah.
because Manchin is now not running
Yeah.
for re-election. He announced today. We can play a little clip of him making that announcement.
After months of deliberation and long conversation with my family, I believe in my heart of hearts that I have accomplished what I set out to do for West Virginia. I have made one of the toughest decisions of my life and decided that I will not be running for re-election to the United States Senate. But what I will be doing is traveling the country and speaking out to see if there is an interest in creating a movement to mobilize the middle and bring Americans together.
This is important because, look, he was not likely to win, which is why he's not running.
Right.
Jim Justice, who's the popular Republican governor of West Virginia, is running with his
Right.
baby dog Bulldog by his
Mhm.
side. And so that's like almost a guaranteed pickup for Republicans in the Senate. Again, we can screw these things up for sure, but it's almost guaranteed pickup. The other thing that's interesting is there is now he's signaling that he wants to possibly be Mr. No Labels or something, right?
Oh, sure.
Right.
Perhaps him and Larry Hogan. Is it Larry?
He and Larry
Is it
Hogan,
Larry
or I
Hogan?
think
Yeah.
Molly Ball reports for the Wall Street Journal on an attempt to get Romney and
Oh,
Manchin together.
goodness.
Yes.
Yeah.
The committee, which is unconnected to Romney or Manchin and can't coordinate with them, plans to raise money for three purposes, according to an advisor: to conduct polling in swing states that will demonstrate a path to victory for such ticket, to build a campaign infrastructure for it, and to lobby delegates to No Labels' planned convention next March to urge them to nominate the duo. Its slogan, the advisor said, will be America Back on Track.
Well, there's a poll out that says if Manchin ran, he would probably get about 16% right now. That's not bad for somebody who hasn't declared that he's running, and he didn't say outright no today. He just said that if he were to run, he would only run and win. If he were to run, he'd win. That's it. So he's not going to do it to be a spoil sport.
Well, and if it's Trump versus Biden, there will be an appetite for
Yeah.
someone else. But the logistics of that are very, very tough.
Sure. You usually chip just enough away for, one other candidate to benefit, and it's not usually that candidate, the third party.
And then
obviously.
finally, I did want to say on the Hill, Democrats in the Judiciary Committee had been attempting to subpoena private citizens who they sort of want to intimidate into not fraternizing with Supreme Court justices, only the conservative ones, because they don't care about the liberal ones
Right.
and what they do. So they were trying to subpoena those folks for having relationships with the Supreme Court, even though they don't have matters before the court, and there's not any evidence that that's a real problem.
Right.
So they were gonna subpoena them, and the left was very excited about it, and then Dick Durbin, very quickly or abruptly pulled the vote to subpoena, and I don't know if maybe that was Democratic donors being like, "Hey guys, they'll do this to us also."
Goes both ways, or it should go both ways. And if you want to see who is hanging out with the liberal justices, then they'll do that. I thought you were going to mention the oversight Comer, because they're now sending out subpoenas to Biden family members. I think is including Hunter, Jim, and Haley. Really quickly, think about this for example, just really quickly, which is in 2018 alone. Here's something that's curious. Basically, it's like a funneling operation is what the Republicans accuse the Biden family of running. They get money from places like CFC China and elsewhere. 20 shell companies, comes to about $24 million. They're getting it from China, Russia, Romania. And then suddenly Joe Biden has all these loans repaid that he had given that money. They're repaying him.
Mm-hmm.
In 2018 alone, Hunter paid off Haley, his former sister-in-law / former girlfriend.
Hallie, I believe.
Hallie? Okay, Hallie. Her credit card bill for the year, it was $525,000.
Sure. Same here, girl.
I was about to ask, is it about similar? It's like, yeah.
Not in a million years.
You say that now, but you're in Vegas, you wait.
I am in Vegas.
Yeah, Steve's going to be like, what's this bill for? Okay. You have to go.
I do have to go. I apologize for the abbreviated episode, Hammerheads, but there's just a lot on my plate this week. And when I get back, we're going to do a little bit more about oversight and more censorship proof from the federal government and who it was going after during COVID and 2020. So I do want to do an update on that as well.
Good.
So we will do that.
And really quickly, listener asked me, what did I think of the Beatles song Now and Then? And I just really want to say it's like the expectation after Star Wars, after many years, that there's a new Star Wars movie, and it's The Phantom Menace. That's basically what
That's
Now
how
and
it
Then
felt
is.
to
That's
you?
not what I was going to
Okay.
say. Okay, that wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorina Matus. And Mary Katharine, if you get a chance, make sure you always hit on a double down on 11.
Okay. Wise counsel. I'm at MK Hammer, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. Follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube and Instagram. Thank you for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media podcast.